It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, you can see in that interactive board I have Morten Reitoft, and Morten is from Denmark, and Morten is probably the guru of industrial and production print. He has a platform called Inkish TV and Inkish News, and he's out there in the world talking to end users and talking to OEMs, talking to dealers, and he really owns that space in the industrial and production space in the world. I truly believe. You know, Morten, it's great to have you on. How are you doing, man?
Oh, thank you, Ray, and it's such a pleasure and honor to be on your show for once. I mean, you were on my show last time,
Uh-huh.
so now I'm returning the favor, or you're returning the favor to me. But I'm doing great, thank you very much. So warming up for getting a little trip to the U.S. In a few days, so I'm looking forward.
Well, you'll have fun. I know you're going to Canada and traveling around the U.S., but you know, Morten, we both have a passion, and that passion is, you know, probably our disgust, if you will, and where our industry's analysts and where our industry's media is really going. And I've talked
Mhm.
about it a lot here on the end of the day with the U.S. based media. I mean, at the end of the day, we have really one publication that delivers original content, and that would be E&X Magazine. So I threw you a bone, Susan. But the rest of the blogs out there just copy and paste. It's, you know, the writing brochures for OEMs, I call it. And you know, I look into the European market. I come across you. You're out there asking tough questions. You know, you don't go on with Morton and not be prepared, kind of thing. But it's great because you cause
Oh,
conversations. You get people to think, and that's really what we need to be doing, right? But
I
what's the
think
climate like? Tell me the climate there in Denmark and Europe in general.
it's funny you ask because I don't know the climate so much in Denmark because I'm actually running a relatively international organization that have made more than 2,000 films from almost all countries in the world. So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
broad selection of information I have achieved by traveling so much as we have done. But I would say that in generally speaking, and one of the things that I really like about also of your show is that there's a lot of things that we simply need to understand, and that is like I understand the OEMs they want to sell,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a genuine thing, and they should do it, of course. But I don't understand that anybody can believe that you can make a proper sale and you can make a good sale if the people that are buying your stuff is not enlightened, if they don't have the proper information that you need to get from an unbiased media, unbiased analysis, unbiased consultants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just that is one of the reasons why I found that, okay, when you invited me for this show, I think that we have a lot of comments to discuss, even also in the industrial space.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Keypoint Intelligence is a great example, and I've been kind of pounding them a lot lately, but well deserved. And by the way, I've offered them; they come on the end of the day with Ray anytime they want, and try to justify what they're doing. But what concerns me is they're owned by private equity, and they bought InfoTrends, which I believe InfoTrends was a pretty top-notch analytical firm that would do research that end users could buy. And I think I want to reiterate this. You know, the end users in the industrial and the production heavy end production space, they really go to these reports for buying decisions. And if these reports are completely nonsensical nuttiness based on, you know, Keypoint Intelligence trying to sell a BLI award or sell some kind of marketing package, the end users are the ones that can pay that price, big time. But I know
That's
InfoTrends.
it.
You know, you had a lot of friends at InfoTrends. But you know, what are some of the things that you've seen that concern you about InfoTrends, if you will, since Keypoint's acquisition?
That's quite a few things because I mean, basically, when you have a company like Keypoint Intelligence that live die for selling accurate information, you need to believe that they have the skills aligned with the accuracy of data, the statistical uncertainty, all the things that they need to gather data in a proper way. I mean, in the past it was pretty easy because I think under Infotrend's name that the big OEMs they actually reported actual sales numbers to Infotrend, so it was easier for them to make reports that were accurate when it came to, let's say, market shares and
Mm-hmm.
to those kind of things. And you know, you can always say that okay, there is a couple of things that are important, and one thing is, of course, that you have like one side which is the information that is given to the OEMs and the vendors and the production side of it, and then there is the market analysis that goes towards how the market is developing. And you can ask yourself what happens if you get too much information that is inaccurate or is not valid in any way. It becomes obsolete. And if something becomes obsolete, you basically don't want to spend any time on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that leaves a big, big hole in the industry, because I think that in order to develop the right technology, because it takes a long time to do, the industry needs to have a certain level of quality when it comes to analysis and analyzing the market and the trends and understanding where it is going. It's not a secret that in the professional industrial OEM space, you often see development cycles of 5, 10, even 15 years. So if you make the wrong decision 15 years ago because you didn't have the right data, I think that most people can understand how tragic that can go for the future, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is part of it. Another thing that I think is extremely important is that you understand that the people that are doing the research and analysis have a background where you can basically trust that they have the, let's say, the understanding of
Mm-hmm.
the data they read. Because if they see a lot of numbers and they don't understand the consequences of these data, you are in the same, let's say, shitty situation that the people that are trying to digest the information that you need is maybe not 100% qualified for doing so. And that is the major concern I have. When I've seen some of your shows, also about the BLi award, it's not so, the BLi is not so much for the industrial print side,
Mm-hmm.
but there are other companies that are doing it. And often I'm wondering, how can people trust an award if it's an award that is just picked by a few people? And I mean, even if they are skilled people, you can ask yourself, is it representative, or is it only representative because there's been passed on a check? And I think that it's the last one that is in, because these awards for all the trade media, for all the organizations, also in my space, has become a tremendous industry in itself. And I think it's kind of fooling the end users and the real customers. And that concerns me a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, if people are basing a decision, you got Keypoint Intelligence talking about security and all these things, and they're basing these decisions, and it's like, well, who says so? And where's the science behind all of this? And it's all turned into marketing stuff. And I heard that from talking to some of the InfoTrends X people, if you will, our industry is very. Let's just say there's a lot of people that just are afraid to tell the truth at the end of the day. They're fear, they're afraid of their job security, whatever it is. But I did hear that the InfoTrends folks felt like they were turned into BLi salespeople, and that's not what they did before. Now they're part of this BLi group, and Keypoint Intelligence calling themselves the news now. They want to have their news station, and I just don't. I mean, there's no way in the world they can be unbiased. It's impossible. You got an OEM paying you thousands and thousands of dollars for a BLi award. You got mega dealers here in the United States. We got a mega dealer with loans and non-accrual and a CCR5 credit rating, and Keypoint Intelligence doesn't want to talk about it because they sell that company how many subscriptions to their BLi, as an example. So it's getting too saturated, and I believe Keypoint Intelligence is getting way too powerful in that space. If they're going to give all the awards out and do all the analysis, is that really something the industry wants? And then what's the how do we combat that? I can do my show and you could talk about stuff that you do, but how do we make the industry aware that maybe we need to look a little bit harder at this? Who's going to help us, Morten?
I think the first step is that somebody dares to talk up about this in a you and I, we've also had a communication on LinkedIn about our joint friend Gibbons from China, and I think that everything comes to the fact that we are products of freedom of speech, that we can speak about anything we want. And I think that if anybody from Keypoint Intelligence or anybody else is listening to this and find us very critical, maybe unjust critical, entertain and participate in the discussion. That is what the democracy is about. That is the reason why we have democracies, where we elect people to take responsibility for our countries. I know it's a little bit off topic, but it is a little bit in the same thing, because why has nobody really questioned the BLi model or the award model? Why has nobody really questioned that you see magazines and media in the industry, or in all industries, that are simply just, as you say, brochure writers? Why are nobody I sent you a link the
Mm-hmm.
other day where I showed you an example of an American trade media where basically they have a commentary and analysis that was actually written by the OEM itself. I mean, who do they fool basically? I mean, how can anybody believe that the OEM, even with the best intentions,
Sure.
should be able to write something that is unbiased? I mean, I would get sacked if I was working in a company and I wrote something that was not beneficial for my own company, of course, right? So the thing is that I think that we become so much a product of marketing and advertising dollars that we have forgot the truth, to be honest. And
Yeah.
that scares me a little bit because I think that influences our society and how we raise our kids and how we see the society growing into something that is way beyond the BLi award and way beyond any of the concerns you can have when it comes to our segment of the industry, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you summed it up perfectly. I mean, we have the absolute fear of conflict, which is a huge dysfunction to growth. And we have what really mind boggles me is when you see these senior leaders in the industry, especially here in the United States. Maybe we need to adopt some of the early retirement age status that we see in Europe and get some of these folks out of the space, if you will. But we see some of these these old timers that are more concerned about making everybody happy. This gratuitous praising. I put a quote out there yesterday on that, and it's almost like, what are you trying to hide? Not everything's perfect. You don't need to be happy every single second of the day. We're in an industry that's declined, that's facing pressure. We have to have consolidation, and we have to have consolidation in the press itself. There's way too much of them doing the same damn thing. But why can't we have conflict? What is the problem with that? Why can't we have debates? And it was grateful that David came on and we could debate the communist thing. And I mean, that could have been a 10-hour show, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's a reality that we don't even want to talk about it. Or here in the United States, we don't want to talk about the threats from some of the China technology companies themselves, and we got to have conversations about that so we can educate people more, and it's really disturbing.
I think there's a few things that you touch upon here that are really important. I mean, you're totally right that you need the conversations. But when it comes to, for example, some of the things that we talk about, why it has turned into be like this, I love the internet. I take that you do the same because it has given us the opportunity to have these discussions without being controlled by anybody. But it has also given us a enormous responsibility for being more picky in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I think have changed the trade media a lot is that some of I call them the young marketing ladies, and that is a little bit wrong because it could be both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like to frame it. I think that some of these young marketing people see that B2B marketing and B2C marketing and consumer marketing, fast-moving consumer goods, are the same measures. And if you have the same measures when it comes to BLi awards, when it comes to analysis, when it comes to reports, when it comes to advertising, it is a short-term gain versus the long-term gain. And every time we have something that needs a little bit longer decision time, the patience is lost basically. So for example, I can't help thinking. I had a webinar just a couple of weeks ago where I had the theme was marketing versus branding,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that if you look at companies that are really good at branding, you can almost not remember the latest product they delivered, but you can always
Mm-hmm.
remember the Apple or the
Sure.
logo of the company because the values that you have associated with the company is part of the branding exercise. And if you don't understand that in your space and in my space, it's huge investments. It is not a decision process that comes from a 30-second video with a funny little dog on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
then you have basically lost maybe the most important part of understanding the communication part of it. But if the management are constantly asking, okay, we pay $10,000, what do we get for the $10,000? The product is is changing basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to return to some of the old virtues. And I'm not in essence, I'm not a conservative person. I like change. I like the new
Mm-hmm.
things. I'm not afraid of AI. I'm not afraid of any of these things. I embrace all the things. But there are some values that we need to sometimes remember that because they are old doesn't mean that they are bad. Right?
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree with
Is it
that.
offset
I'm just
from
picking
your
on the old folks.
conversation, or is it okay?
Well, no, I agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, without having candid conversations, nothing happens. And when I think
Yeah.
about when you look at the BLI award platform itself and how they keep adding awards, and it's just like the summer pick and the winter pick and all this crazy nonsense, but that plays into that whole infrastructure for all those analysts and all the people that are part of that ecosystem. And I just think it's troubling. I mean, have you seen anything that kind of stands out that you would have said this is definitely a red flag besides the OEM posting their own analysis? But is there anything that you've seen lately that's really of concern?
I mean, the awards in general, I think, is of concern because I think that they are awarding products that are maybe they're great, but I'm not sure that they're always the greatest, and therefore
Mm-hmm.
you can think that the award program skew the perspective for the buyers. That is one thing. I'm deeply concerned about the media in general, and now we're talking about the trade media, of course, in particular. But I think it's because the revenue models needs to change in order to get that thing. One of the things you mentioned in the beginning of the show was how can you be unbiased if you I mean
Mm-hmm.
you and I, we both live also from sponsors, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they're both there to say pretty much everything that is important to us, right? And I think that when you look at those kind of things, that is like in the old times it was pretty easy because a newspaper, it had an editorial section or a editorial department in a company, and then they had an advertising sales department, and they was like scotters in between, so you could
Mm-hmm.
not get into each other's space basically. Today, where things are moving so fast, and where I read actually an article that was quite interesting because if you think of the newspaper subscriptions are decreasing all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
or not all over the world, but most countries in the world. And I read that in America, for example, there was even some of the big, well-credited newspapers for being unbiased. In the old times, if you're a good journalist, you would cover both sides of a story. So you would
Sure.
say that, okay, Republicans say this and Democrats say this, and then they make up your own mind,
Yeah.
basically, right? But what happens when the subscriptions are falling is basically that the editors, because they want to keep the existing subscribers, they write stories for their audience rather than writing stories that can provoke and, let's say, tickle your intellect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a product of these, let's say, commercialization of all content. I mean, if you think of it, you cannot walk in the street without being shouted at. Shouted is in advertising
Mm-hmm.
kind of space. You cannot surf the internet without being shouted at. You cannot have peace, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big concern because I mean, if I look at my kids, they are with the phones all the time. They are on YouTube all the time. They get influenced by something that I cannot even control. And I don't know in America, but in Europe, there's a lot of discussions these years about, okay, have we as parents simply forgot a responsibility to say stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is very frustrating, and I know it's very bold compared to what you asked me. Um, Another thing is also, and just get back a little bit back on track, that has also concerned me a little bit is that since the pandemic, where the trade shows, of course, suffered a lot, I think there has become a little tendency that the trade show owners try to, you know, bolster their show's importance beyond reach, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can ask yourself, is it really important to go and buy a printer or a workflow solution or whatever you're going to buy at a trade show just to see it and shake hands with people? Or is it just, in quotation, a social thing that you believe is worth the investment? I think that we need to shake the tree and basically think a little, redefine a little bit when it comes to communication about people, because people are more educated because of the internet when they get to a buying decision.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we need to change trade media, we need to change trade shows, we need to change awards, we need to change how analysts are working, because it doesn't make sense to anybody anymore. I remember. Sorry, I just keep talking. I remember the former editor of Wired magazine, Chris Anderson. He once said that with the internet, you don't need a magazine because you can find all the information you need on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But he says there's one thing you can't get, and that is if you have an editor curating a magazine, you basically get a much more diverse world because somebody else is guiding you to the content that might educate you and also broaden your perspective of the world. And I think that we don't need more narrow-minded people. We need a broader perspective of the world, and I think that plays on both the U.S. and the European side, to be honest.
Well, I think it comes down to one thing, and you said the word a couple of different times, but we all have sponsors. I have my own sponsors. They're all over my website. I direct people to them all the time. It's not that complicated to figure out who they are. But at the same time, they don't have any edit control. They don't edit anything.
Precisely.
And
Yeah.
when I talk about what I want to talk about, it's based on what I believe. My thoughts. Are they always right? Who the hell knows? If you don't get challenged, you have to agree. Well, I must be right. so I think that's part of it. And the problem is that if you look inside the United States at our media, if I want to talk about Konica in a way that Konica doesn't like, or have an issue with some of the things that they're doing, and I bring that up or bring awareness to that, they would rather go on a platform where they can completely gaslight the whole entire conversation and talk about absolutely nothing, and they know that whoever is managing that platform is not going to do anything to upset them. And to me, that's just where the whole thing went crazy. I mean, could you imagine if that's all we talked about was everything we were always comfortable with, and we never had any kind of conflict? And that's kind of where we're at, other than you doing commentary and doing what you're doing in that industrial space, which is huge. And quite honestly, in the high-end production and industrial space, and in industrial, especially inkjet production or industrial space, is growing rapidly. And those are where the consumers are looking at this information. When you look at the business print and all the dealer friends of mine that sell business print and business applications, those customers could give a flying crap about BLi awards. They're not making any decisions based on the summer pick and the winter pick. That is all for the narcissism of the OEMs and the industry in itself, or some of these stupid awards they give each other. But when you look in your space, it's very important. I think it's hugely important because these people are buying machines that are $1 million, $2 million, and they're looking at this analysis, and they have to have trust in that analysis, I would think.
But Ray, there might be something that we haven't discussed, which is maybe one of the reasons why people keeping buying these BLi awards. And just think of this for a second. If you are Carnegie Minolta and get an award or buy an award, basically, and you put that in a press release, if the media are not critical to the awards or to anything, that's the information they will share. And information shares as fast as you can say boom, right? Mm-hmm. And that basically means it removes the attention from the real problem. Mm-hmm. It goes directly away from a bit bad fiscal year. So the shareholders will be like blindfolded into believe that everything is great here because we have a tremendous award show coming up with 10, 15 awards of how great we are. So maybe it's not for the consumers. Maybe they're just using them to fool the media, because if they get the media extended, I think that if you're as a stockbroker or working in a bank, it can be difficult to get through the jungle of shit information, to be honest, right? So maybe that is the main product, to be honest.
Well, when I think about Konica as a great example, I'll bring them up again, but you go to their website, there's literally, I think I went through, there's like 200 pages of awards they've won. They keep every one of them on there. But I do believe our industry has a real problem in gaslighting. And, they love the whole award nonsense. It's getting worse every year. But, you're right. If you want to distract from reality, the best thing to do is talk about an award. I did hear a recent earnings call where they talked about winning a Keypoint Intelligence Award. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe the analysts obviously they don't put any merit to that, do they? But according to you, they might actually be doing that. Mort, we got to stay on our mission. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Yes,
and,
sure.
and I watch your stuff, and hopefully some of our friends will. I'll put a link on today's episode. But, let's stay in touch, and let's keep the media on their toes, because we're not afraid. We're not afraid to talk about what's on our minds. And We're not saying we're always right, 100% correct, but if we don't have anybody that's going to actually have conversations around what we're saying that's not correct, one would have to assume there's probably more to hide. That's my thinking.
I agree with you. So thank you very much, Ray.
Yep, because everybody watching us knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.